When the weather ball is glowing red, warmer weather's just ahead.
When the weather ball is shining white, colder weather is in sight.
When the weather ball is wearing green, no weather changes are foreseen. Colors blinking by night and day say precipitation's on the way.
Money is a ball.
P.J. Hofstrom was the first on-air weather forecaster in the Twin Cities. Yet he was also a newspaper columnist and cartoonist. P.J. would combine his art with his forecasts. Early weather segments used a simple presentation, just a magic marker and a map.
Johnny Morris in the weather room. Today was mostly cloudy and very windy this morning. However, things have tapered off considerably since then.
Decades ago, forecasters didn't have as much information to work with.
When coverage began on Channel 4, weather sandwiched a bread commercial. Early on, announcer Bud Kraling was told to fill in on the Tasty Bread Weather Report.
Well, I didn't know anything about the weather and never did pick up much information over the next 40 years. But I had a lot of background in doing commercial work. It was a 5-minute weather program, and I probably spent about 3 minutes on the Tasty Bread commercial.
Bud kept the job, held it when it became the Shell Weather Tower. Viewers were supposed to imagine he was outside on high. Then came a real view outdoors, the weather window. Passers-by on 9th Street could see and be seen. There wasn't a lot of time for Bill and Bud to ponder the forecast. The Weather Bureau supplied it. They had other duties like announcing station breaks.
Not that we hinge our weather forecast. I thought of myself as kind of the next-door neighbor talking to the friends in the neighborhood.
The humidity is not quite so bad tonight, so this push is a whole lot easier.
The number and size of weather maps and weather factoids kept expanding. The station got radar.
According to our radar weather picture, we should at least have a sprinkle in our Twin Cities or either.
Looking like an old World War II movie, it was military surplus. Every few years, the viewers were reminded that weather isn't just a spectator sport.
Roses are red, violets are violet. We're getting the snow tonight, a whole great big pile of it.
When I began there in 1970, there was one satellite picture available each day. And that came directly here and had to be pieced together. But that was all.
Figure it all out.
I saw the weathercasts as informational. As long as I got the information out, and hopefully in an entertaining manner, because weather can be a very dull subject. I had this one thing that I did all the time was peek around at the camera. They called me the Peekaboo Weatherman.
When it wasn't life-threatening, weather could be a source of comic relief in the day's news. Bud had a long-standing partnership, usually as the straight man to Dave Moore.
Well, don't you have to study the high and low pressure systems and the occluded fronts and the stationary troughs and all that sort of thing?
Well, they have a way of working out.
But what has a way of working out?
Well, those things, whatever you said, those fronts, those things.
KSTP was one of the first stations in the country to have its own weather radar system on site and employed the first qualified on-air meteorologist in the Twin Cities.
Fairly important today.
We've gone from where we would draw our little weather maps by hand, with blue and red pencils, to being able to print one out quickly off of a computer and be looking at it hour by hour, even minute by minute.
Eventually, the station was ready to move the weathercaster into the weather.
When I came to CCO in '92, we went up to this flat-roofed building and thought, this is the place. We'll build a garden here. We'll spend a couple $1,000s, and we'll have this oasis in downtown Minneapolis.
Our Doppler is the only Doppler here in the Twin Cities that can actually predict wind speed and wind direction, which of course helps us with severe weather prediction and helps us where tornadoes may occur.
From where we were 22 years ago to where we are today is just a huge, huge, giant leap because we really are much more accurate than we used to be.
I tell people anything beyond 5 to 7 days is voodoo. Use at your own risk. I think the real opportunities for improvement on the forecast side is the short-range forecast, the nowcast.
WCCO's weather station plans to offer a closer view of the sky above.
The weather is not flat or 2D, so now we have a tool that can display the weather in 3 dimensions and take people on sort of a space shuttle tour of the atmosphere over Minnesota and the nation. One more way to tell the story.
The story that never ends.
Fishing season is in full swing up there. I was walking around town, about 100 little ice fishing houses out there on the lake. The suburbs of Lake Wobegon, what they call it. Walking down the street, I could hear guys out there laughing. I think everybody knows it's no secret to say that those are little lodges out there, actually. It's where guys go to be by themselves or to be with other guys and to get away from, well, to get away from women.
To some, ice fishing is an answer to the question, to what lengths will man go to avoid his wife and family? I mean, golf is one thing, but to sit on the tundra staring at a hole in the ice?
Well, there's no telephone, there's no TV, there's no nobody hollering at you. Peaceful, and you never know, you might get the big one.
Now, for people who don't know, ice fishing is very simple. First, you drill a hole in the ice with an auger. Now, it's like a post hole digger, only for ice. And I mean, these babies really chaw through the ice. In the fun department, they fall just below the chainsaw, but way ahead of the power leaf blower. So, you drill a hole in the ice, put some bait on a fishing line, drop it down, and wait.
And the guys dropped their drop lines down into the holes and kind of forgot about them. Most of the time, they were in the water without any bait at the end. You can just see these old guys loosen up out there. Sit around, drink coffee, talk. Just let it fly.
I like to drink beer while they're fishing. I just like to come out and socialize, and they don't really care if they're catching any fish or not.
Tell you the winters get kind of long here. Just sit there and look at a hole, you know, and just, there's something about it. Looking at a bob or waiting for it to go down, jigging. It's, you know, looking for that almighty walleye. That's what I like looking for. That's, you know, that's my fish, the walleyes.
You gotta love it. It's just a rush when you pull a fish out. But you spend a lot of time not pulling fish out, so.
To be honest, most of ice fishing is looking down a hole trying to keep your feet warm. But there is a beauty in that too, for there's no better time for thinking great thoughts than under the guise of looking like you're doing something. Hours can pass in peaceful contemplation, only broken occasionally by a buddy saying, "Had any hits?" "No, me neither." Paradise.